Australia, that distant country, is always a challenge for any unexpected guest. During one of my official visits to Australia, the meetings with my personal friends in Melbourne, Sydney and other cities were inevitable. In addition to official contacts with the representatives of the authorities of the Macedonian emigrant organizations and church communities of the Macedonian Orthodox Church, on that occasion my conversation with Alex S. from Sydney, an old friend from secondary school, created a lasting impression. We had made several arrangements to meet, but it finally came true during this visit of mine, when we decided to spend a whole day together and discussed our pleasant and unpleasant memories from our youth and his life abroad. Alex was married to a Macedonian from the region of Prilep, a real beauty who moved to Sydney with her parents when she was 15. They had a daughter, his favourite, who was in the first grade. Each summer his daughter and her mother used to go to Melbourne to visit her granddad and grandma. Alex was a successful businessman and held a key position in a corporation owned by an Englishman building contractor, a profession highly valued and respected in Australia because development of the construction industry there is dictated by a permanent inflow of migrant workers. Alex didn't know about my visit to Sydney. He was surprised when I called him from the hotel where I was staying. He was more than happy to spend the weekend together talking about our experiences. I had 15 days at my disposal to carry out my official and private contacts in Australia, and it was a very busy agenda. After I phoned Alex and arranged our meeting, I put my notes in order and decided to take a rest, staying at the hotel until the meeting with my old friend the next day. During the next 10 days of my stay in Australia, I had to visit only Canberra and Melbourne official matters, but private meetings like this were an integral part. I met Alex the next day at the hotel restaurant where he told me a story that made a strong impression on him, that he would never forget. It was an episode with an English woman named Mary which took place in the beginning of July when his wife went to visit friends in Melbourne for an extended weekend. After a marathon session at the directorial board of the company in which he worked, Alex went to a nearby bar to have a drink before going home for a deserved holiday. As he sat at the bar, he ordered a glass of whiskey with ice. Suddenly, a beautiful young woman with golden curls stood next to him. Like any other civilized man, he introduced himself to her, wishing her a good day and good health. She immediately showed interest in him. Until then, Alex hadn't had any contacts or amorous affairs outside his marriage because his family was everything to him and he was completely devoted to it. His wife and daughter were his greatest treasures that he wouldn't trade for a pile of diamonds, let alone another woman. But he found himself in a situation of temptation and didn't know how to act to accept the challenge or break off the game. He yielded to temptation and took the risk. He couldn't even imagine what was going to happen in the next 2 days. But let us continue the story. From the bar, Mary took him to her apartment close by. She threw herself into his arms even in the hall. She showered him with passionate kisses as if they had been lovers for years. Alex took on the challenge. Quickly he experienced sexual climax in the hall, standing on his feet. But they continued in her bedroom. The English woman was puzzled by the wild sexual drive of the Macedonian male. She didn't allow him to catch his breath. What they experienced together was stronger than a volcanic eruption. It was an unexpected erotic explosion which made them lose their bearings. When she learned that he was married and that he had a daughter, Mary reassured him that their meeting wouldn't have any impact on his marital harmony. But evil never sleeps. They decided to spend the second day and night at his house, which proved to be Alex's cardinal mistake. Being captive in the claws of passion, Mary behaved as if she was in seventh heaven, in a virtual world which belonged only to her. Alex came to his senses first from the sexual magic and suggested to Mary that they split up and go on with their lives with these sweet memories. Mary muttered something under her breath which Alex perceived as her consent. But from that moment onwards, his life was to turn into hell slowly but surely.
2 days later, his wife Biljana and his daughter returned to Sydney, where they were welcomed by Alex with great warmth, which could only be shown by a man in love. He had missed his loved ones while they were away. The apparent peace in their relations didn't last for long. Although Alex acted as if his life had returned to normal, he was emotionally affected by the chance that his life could be destroyed. The English woman couldn't get over the passionate affair with him. After a few days, the separation from him started to distress her, so she phoned him often. First, she phoned him at his job and then at his home. Mary persisted with her demands that their séances had to continue. Alex ignored her more and more, making efforts to keep his extramarital affair secret from Biljana. Unfortunately, all his efforts were in vain. Mary's aggressiveness became unbearable. In addition to her phone calls, Mary started visiting Alex at the company where he was working, creating an additional source of worry for him. He started thinking about moving to another apartment before this crazy woman forcibly entered his home and caused a family breakdown. He advertised that his apartment was for rent, but unfortunately, the English woman saw it. One day, she came to his home and presented herself to Biljana as a client who was looking for an apartment. She inquired about the rental conditions. When Alex returned home from work, he found her there and accepted her as a client, not as his lover. Therefore, Biljana was spared the eventual stress which she could have suffered had she discovered who this woman was in reality. From that moment onwards, Alex made extreme efforts to avoid any meetings with Mary. Unfortunately, she didn't leave him alone at home either. She phoned him again and again. When Biljana answered the phone, the line was usually dead. Alex knew that it was the English woman and that she would not quit terrorizing his family. So he decided to tell Biljana what had happened while she was with her parents in Melbourne. What he told came as a shock to his wife. She fell into a daze and demanded that he leave their home. Alex obeyed without saying a word, but he was in a panic from the misfortune which struck him. His absence was unbearable to his lovely daughter, who phoned him every day asking him to come back home. Meanwhile, Alex's car, which was parked in a multi-level garage near the company where he worked, was set on fire. 2 days later, his daughter broke her arm at school, causing his wife to experience not only a nervous breakdown, but also a car accident where she almost died. Alex asked for assistance from the police, but unfortunately, they didn't show great interest in his case. They asked for additional evidence proving Mary's involvement in all these accidents, but Alex couldn't provide it. Later, however, the police did their job. After some time, Alex returned to his wife, who had already left the hospital, and to his daughter, who had recovered completely. He was very sorry about those accidents and misfortunes, which he blamed on himself. He decided to stay with his family and protect them, hoping that they would escape from that nightmare soon. And it really happened that way. That moment was a turning point for his family. Their marriage resumed its normal course. The happy days of the past also returned.